Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Hey everybody, today I want to talk about a book that I just finished reading that is extremely hyped and has been on my radar for a very, very long time. And that book is Manacled by Senlin Yu. So this is a fan fiction. If you don't know, this is a fan fiction, over 900 pages I believe it says on Goodreads, that is Harry Potter, Draco and Hermione pairing fanfiction. And honestly, I feel like, so first of all, I want to say this book has been on my radar for a really long time. I first heard about it from Jen from the Book Refuge. She read it several years ago. I think, I don't even know when, like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe longer than that. We've been friends for a long time. And she really was trying to get me to read it. And I was like, I tried it. I tried the audio because I know there were audio versions of this on Spotify and YouTube. And honestly, I do come into fanfiction with a little bit of bias, right? Like a little bit, not necessarily for any reason other than what I perceive fanfiction to be, which I can now say I was dead wrong, right? Because I guess I sort of assumed fanfiction was either only there for the smutty bits, to have people pairings put together so you could have smut of them that you wouldn't get in their original one. And I know there is, obviously there's going to be fanfiction like that exists, but that was my overwhelming bias, is that I believed that's exactly what was out there. So again, Manacled is my first fanfiction I've ever read. I am just trying to tell you about how I sort of came to this and how my opinion changed. I also have sort of always been of the opinion that I just have never really had a desire to read more in a series when like the canon of it already exists. Like I've always been fully satisfied with where a story ends, especially if I loved it. If I loved the book, I loved how it ended, I don't want to see any more. And if I didn't love the book and I didn't love how it ended, I don't care to see anymore, you know? So that's kind of been my whole idea of fanfiction, is that it's kind of only there for the smutty bits, that I just really wasn't interested in it because once that story ended, I just didn't really have a desire to see where it went from there. And then my final one, which is dead wrong, that I have said in the past on my channel, and I feel like I really need to apologize and take that back, is that I assumed there was a poor writing quality to fanfiction. And this book, I know I set the bar high with my first fanfiction being Manacled, but this was absolutely incredible. I gave this 6 stars. This is definitely going to be one of those books that never leaves my brain, never leaves my heart. Like I started this book on January 25th-ish, somewhere around there, the end of January. I finally decided this is the year I'm going to read this physically. I still had the fanfiction on my Kindle because I believe it's been pulled from the fanfiction sites because she is reworking this to be traditionally published, that will come out this fall. And so it's been a big goal of mine to read Manacled before that comes out because I wanted to be able to compare. I wanted to see what the hype was about Manacled, and I just knew that if I didn't read Manacled before Alchemized comes out, which is the reworked version of this, taking all of the Harry Potter parts out of it, I'm not sure exactly what else is in there. I knew that if I didn't read Manacled before that book comes out and I start hearing reviews about it, I would never read it. So I really, really wanted to have the experience of reading Manacled before Alchemized comes out. So this is a book that is so often talked about, that people are generally in love with, have very strong emotional reactions to it, and I was just so curious about that, right? So way back, again, like I want to say it was 2022, so I think maybe at least 3 years ago that Jen read this and was talking about it. I immediately went to check out the audiobook. The audio was on Spotify at the time, and I started listening to it. And I will say, because this is Harry Potter fan fiction, and it is an alternate version of how that ends, so in Manacled, Harry Potter didn't win. The Order of the Phoenix did not win. Voldemort won the war, and so really bad things are happening in Manacled, like very bad things. So in the beginning of Manacled, you do learn and hear and read about a lot of deaths that are characters that if you've read and loved Harry Potter, it's going to feel awful, right? And I will also say that I have always been a huge fan of Harry Potter. It has been a series of books that I have read and reread over and over and over again. I love and adore the Harry Potter books. So I come to Manacled with that like deeply in my heart and my mind, right? Like I am a huge Harry Potter fan. And I never really talk about it because I have very mixed feelings about talking about them online with J.K. Rowling's stance on trans people, right? So, as soon as I started reading Manacled and I saw and read some of the deaths very vividly described of Harry and the other members of the Order that we have come to know and love, it was really, really rough for me. It was really, like, depressing for me. I did not like being in this alternate world where Harry Potter lost and the good guys didn't win. Like, it was really just depressing to me, and I was like, I don't really think I want to read this. And at that point, early on, there really is no romance between Draco and Hermione. This book is the ultimate slow burn romance. True enemies to lovers. I don't know, and I've read a lot of slow burn romances. I've read a lot of enemies to lovers romances. I have never in my life read anything that comes close to this level of perfect for slow burn romance and enemies to lovers. Like, there is truly nothing like this that I have read. And so initially, I'm rambling. I'm going to get to the point. I should say, this is going to be a very rambly review. So if you're looking for a concise review, you're not going to find that here, okay? So I put it on hold and I just didn't go through with it. And another reason why I didn't finish it way back in 2022 is just because of the sheer length of it, right? Especially once I started making YouTube videos and content about reading and reviewing books, I very much realized that the pace that I naturally read at is not conducive to reading long books and being able to still make content, right? So anytime that I read anything that is a really long book, I just have to either acknowledge that, okay, I'm not going to be able to have enough content to make videos as often as I would like because this is taking so much of my time, and I'm not a super fast reader. This book, I started reading this at the end of January. It is now like the beginning of March, so this took me over a month to read. And it's simply because I read it physically. I don't have a lot of time to read physically, so my time is really limited to weekends sometimes and late at night, So it took me a while to read it. So, backstory of all of that. So this time, with the publication of Alchemized on the horizon, I was like, I'm doing it. I'm seeing it through. I am seeing it through. And I did restart this from the beginning. I got into somewhere like 14 chapters when I had originally started it, and because it had been so long, I was like, I'm just going to restart it over so I have everything in my brain fresh. So I did go back and re-listen. At the time when I listened to this in January, there were still chapters of Manacled on Spotify that I listened to, and then I would read on my Kindle. So the parts that I had read before, I did kind of just read again on audio, and the rest of it I read on my Kindle because I also feel like the audio production, I'm sure, I kind of struggled with it. The production isn't of the highest quality, and it was affecting my enjoyment of it. So I then decided I'm just going to read it through the Kindle. So this book has basically end of Wizarding World as we know it. Voldemort has won. Harry Potter is dead. The Order is dead and disbanded. Hermione is the only remaining Order of the Phoenix, and she has been captured to put into a surrogate program where she will be impregnated by Death Eaters who they want to see their wizarding line continue, right? Hermione is special, not only because she was friends with Harry, but also because she was involved, or they believe that she is the person who is responsible for this mass killing of Death Eaters and explosion, essentially. But she has no memory of it. She has certain areas of her memory that she can't access, and so the theory is that Voldemort takes her to his highest general in the army, his High Reeve, who is Draco Malfoy, as his surrogate. So it is her job to become pregnant by Draco, basically. And yeah, so that's a pretty rough beginning, and she has absolutely no memories of how that explosion happened. There are lots of her history that she doesn't have any memory of. It looks like they're blocked off. So they believe that as she does get pregnant, that Draco, because he is skilled at occlumency, will be able to access those memories, and the Dark Lord Voldemort will find out what she is hiding and find out if there are any other remaining Orders of the Phoenix alive, and so on. So I thought that the plotting in this honestly was really, really clever. I feel like overall the story in here flows so organically and it feels like it's a very tight plot. Like everything that happens in here feels very justified, feels like it is the exact reason that it needs to be in there, and it really pushes the story forward. This book, for the first time for me in a long time, had that element of I was thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. I couldn't wait to stop what I was doing so I could read it. Like, all I wanted to do for the last month, anytime I had time to be not working, was read Manacled. Like, I was kind of obsessed with it. I was thinking about it all the time. I was fascinated with it. Now, that is to say, there were parts of this book that definitely read slower to me than others. It is broken up into 3 parts, and so you have the beginning, when she is put into a surrogate. You have the middle, which is really largely flashbacks of memory of what happened that led to her getting captured and becoming a surrogate. And then you have the last section, which is she is getting her memories back. Now what is going to happen with her and Draco? And I will say that because this is a fan fiction and it was serialized over time, I do feel like there are parts of this that are not necessary if it's just read as a book. But because, again, it's serialized, I kind of expect that there is going to be some parts of it that are going to be drawn out, some parts that are going to be drawn out for tension and for plot elements that are going to be coming later. So there were parts of this in the middle beginning that I wasn't 100% invested. I think that the whole reason that I read through the first part, which part 1 is kind of painful to get through for me personally, there is graphically depicted sexual assaults, there's graphically depicted violence. It's a very heavy, very dark book overall. And it can be really tough because in the beginning you don't have that element of, you don't really even see anything about, they have sparks, they have chemistry, they have feelings towards one another to get you to feel like, okay, I'm going to keep pushing through. The entire reason I decided to keep going forward is because I knew it was coming. I'd heard so much hype about it, I wanted to see what the hype was about, right? So part 2 comes along and I was much more invested. That's really where I got to the point where I was like, I wanted to keep reading, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The first part was a bit of a chore for me personally. Now, I will say that I think that the things that this author has done with the Wizarding World elements is extremely clever. I really like how she took elements of the Harry Potter world and made them her own in a way that feels like, yes, that feels like it would be a part of this world, a part of this universe. Like, I'm just very, very impressed with how she took a fully established world that a lot of people know so deeply, and she expanded on it in a way that felt like it belonged in there and felt like it was real, but also felt so unique and interesting, and just, like, the world building aspects of this really had me hooked for a long, long time. Like, that was what I was there for, by and large, for a lot of it, until the romance starts to happen. Now, the romance takes a while to get there, and it is a true enemies to lovers. But when it gets there, it was so good, you guys. I don't feel like I can express enough to you how much I deeply loved this romance, because not only is it a slow building romance, it is such a beautiful look at how deep severe trauma impacts you in a relationship and impacts that relationship when you're experiencing that trauma together. Up until the very end of this, when we see the epilogue and we get to see like what happened to them at the end and how they're living their life now, I was just like mesmerized by this, and it felt, and that's something that really impressed me about this book, is that even though this is a fantasy and it's a fantasy romance essentially, it feels so real. Every single thing in here feels like it could be real life. It was very easy for me to suspend my disbelief. Like, it just feels real. And that, I think, says so much about this author, too. Not even so much that the magical elements felt real, but the plot elements, how the characters acted and responded, the way that the romance built and developed. I can't think of a hero that I have read that personifies more "he will burn down the world for her" than this one does. Like, he is literally, nothing matters to him except Hermione. And, like, I absolutely love that. I absolutely loved an unhinged hero who is only there for the heroine, who literally, the only thing that matters is her. He's not going to hold back when it comes to revenge. He is not going to hold back when it comes to rescuing her. If you haven't read this yet and you want that type of hero, you have got to read this book, because it was absolutely amazing, stunning. If you like it, well, he's not even morally gray. He is black, except for Hermione. Well, that's not true. I do think he's morally gray, but like a very, very, very dark gray. And it's not until we really get to the end of the book, when we see all of his layers like unpeeled, that we get to realize just how morally gray that he is, right? He loves Hermione. She is the only thing that matters to him, and it is so beautiful. And I also really liked seeing that she felt that exact same way about him, you know, by the time you get to the end. So yeah, I absolutely love this book. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was amazing. I thought the writing quality was incredibly high. I thought that and you know, like I did talk earlier about how writing quality was something I was worried about. I feel like there were parts of this book that were beautifully written, beautiful sentences that you could pluck out that just like haunt you and make you feel things. But the thing that overwhelmingly impresses me is her storytelling ability. Like, she absolutely knows how to build a story, and I'm so excited to see what happens with Alchemized. I cannot wait to read that book. I'm a little nervous, but I'm mostly just so excited because this book showed me that not only is she a competent writer, and at times a beautiful writer, but she knows how to build a story. She knows how to build a convincing story. And even though this is set in a Harry Potter world, I still feel like all of these elements are story elements that she created herself. Like, the elements that are like an offshoot of what we know of Harry Potter, those are things that she created on her own. So I'm super curious to see what happens in Alchemized. I can't wait to read more from her. Like, this was, you know, this was an experience that I don't think I've ever had anything like. I absolutely loved reading this. It was so compelling from first page to last page. I never ever was a Hermione shipper. I just didn't care, honestly. Like, I just didn't care to ship them. It was just something I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't see it. And then I read this book and I'm like, I get it. I get it. I see it. I get the hype. This is a book that deserves every ounce of hype that it gets. It was incredible. There's so much in here. Like, I've really largely talked about the storytelling aspect and the romance aspect of it, which is just amazing. But there is also so much to say in here about suffering and trauma and war. Like, I think that she takes a no-holds-barred look at war in this book, and as someone who has never experienced that before, this was a really pretty gritty, probably realistic version of how that would affect people and the things they had to do and how they live with that, you know? Like, I adored this book. I thought it was fantastic. A new all-time favorite. I feel like, you know, because it took me so long to read this, there was no way I could vlog it, so I finished it last night. It's the next morning, and I just had to come and film a video because, yeah, everything everybody says about this book, every praise this book has received is deserved. It was absolutely incredible, and I can't believe, honestly, like, if you knew me and how I feel about Harry Potter, I feel like you would be surprised that now I am a diehard Hermione shipper, not Hermione shipper, because at least the couple in this book, they are perfect for each other, and I will literally never get over every single scene in here where Draco is basically burning down the world to get to her and to save her. Like, perfection. Loved it so much. Alright, my friends, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have made it this far, please feel free to leave me a black heart, and I will see y'all in my next video.